Okay. Now look here. If this is a way in which men can be brought to have such a vision through the mind alone, such that it can rival the religious traditions of a whole age, how are men, notice the language, to be brought up, nurtured, developed, to be brought up such that they can endure, that's why you need strength. All right? How are such men to be brought up such that they can then engage in such a magnificent pursuit and endure such a profound experience? Now we're shifting to the Republic, because that's where the dialectic is. Now, after the allegory of the cave in the upper world, he concludes with this great statement. He says, now we have to ask, how are such men, right? How such men are to be produced. Now, of course, this is in a city, that's the Republic. And how shall they be brought up? Notice the language. The language is exactly the same kind of language we were using before, isn't it? Brought up, nurtured, developed. Well, just to make sure. How are such men to be produced? How shall they be brought up? Now, here's where he shifts. Into the light. As you know, some are said to go up from Hades to heaven. That's the language. Which, and of course, their view of Hades is different than our view of hell, but it's the afterworld. The distance between these two terms, the full range of human experience, the totality of all human experience expressed in the extremes, they would call those two extremes Hades and heaven. That's the way they talk about it. And therefore, when he gives the allegory of the cave in the upper world, of course, the cave is at the depths, and that's the Hades. And the world in the upper world is like being likened to heaven. Now, here's the word he's using. All right, light. We shift. Need a new diagram out of the symposium into the Platist Republic. The question we want to pursue now is, what kind of experience is it that is called the perfection of beauty? Which again is called gaining a vision into the nature of reality. So that's what we want to know. Is it possible to say, well, there's one image that's being used, light. Now, in the allegory of the cave, as you undoubtedly know, right, there's a fire here in the cave, and there's a wall where men walk back and forth with a raised parapet, and they carry objects on their heads, and the objects on their head then are produced on the wall of the cave as shadows, and men are chained here they've been there since childhood, and they take that to be reality. They take that to be reality. That's the way Socrates says it. They take that to be a reality. And therefore he says, you know what you have to do? You have to take one of these people, release them from their chains, because they're chained, it's like a prison. You see, you have to stand them up. Got to stand them up, release them from the chains. And you have to, by questions, get them to see that what they formerly took to be reality is not reality at all, but nothing other than these shadows. It's not the shadows, the origin of the shadows of the objects being carried on the men's heads. They have to see that, and they have to see that what's produced that is a light behind them, a natural fire. He said, now when that happens, they are terribly confused and puzzled, and they prefer to go back into their old existence content. He said, but what if we were then to take them and force them up that difficult and steep ascent into the upper world? Then what would it be like? He said, well, it's like there are two stages up there. One is that so overwhelming experience of light, radiance, that they have to be brought up there in two stages. They first have to be brought up at night so they can get used to the upper world. and then never look at the source of the light, but to look at the reflections now in surfaces like water, and lakes, and things of that nature, so they can get used to the objects, because then when they're used to the objects and reflected in such shiny surfaces, they can then turn at last and take a look at what produced them. And that, of course, is the nature of the sun, right? The sun in the upper world. Now look here, curious, see? This ascent into real being, this is now called real being, we shall say is true philosophy. This is the ascent, the journey of the soul, remember what we called it, from Hades to heaven. That's the ascent into real being. That's the ascent into real being, of course, is what is nature, what is ultimate reality, what is. So, this ascent into real being, that's what we shall call, and that's what we'll say is true philosophy. That's philosophy, it has nothing to do with anything else. That's philosophy. Now he has this most splendid statement. This is the statement where he looks over the whole thing, and I'm going to see if I can invite you to see it on two levels. There's two parts of it. I broke it up into two. Now he looks at this whole allegory of the cave in the upper world, and he says that in the world of the known, now this is the world of the known, because the realm of understanding and knowledge, this is the realm of the known. The ascent is the level of understanding. So that in the world of the known, the upper world, last of all is the idea of the good. Well, last thing to be seen is this. And with what toil to be seen, because there's a whole practice of contemplation, meditation, training of the soul for that vision. And then seen, once seen, this must be inferred to be the cause of all right and beautiful things for all. Now notice what that idea of the good does. This must be inferred to be the cause of all right and beautiful things for all. Now notice this, which gives birth to light and the king of light in the world of sight. Now wait a minute, what does that mean? That idea of the good, then, is the cause of light. It gives birth to light. Look here. This gives birth to this idea of the good gives birth to light. That idea. And the king of light. What's the king of light? The sun. It gives two births. The literal sun in the heavens. So he's saying, hey, look here. In this game of philosophy, what you want to do, then, is to see the nature of reality. The nature of reality is nothing other than that perfection of beauty which is seen in a vision which the mind alone can see it. You see that, that's equivalent in the allegory of the cave, in the